I was homeschooled. And it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And I think completely formed who I am as a person and a thinker and an academic. And that was something actually in terms of the like conversations with Alex and I, he was definitely not on board with homeschooling at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yep. Did not want.
He probably heard what I heard growing up.
Yes,
which was
of course.
Weird, alienated farm children.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. With a really long skirt.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because he was a like private school lacrosse, like frat star, like SEC. And he married the homeschooled, like theater kid horse girl.
Yeah.
I was like, if you told him that at 15 years old, he probably would have died.
Yeah.
Genuinely like, what is my life? But he knew, I knew, so that's kind of an interesting thing. We weren't exactly aligned when we first started dating, but the values were there. So he was like, oh, I'm not really interested in homeschool because I've heard weird stuff. And he was like, but I don't want my kids in public school because, the system is designed against that. And so he had all of the facts and the understanding, but his solution was, he went to a private school. He was like, well, just send him to a private school. And then the conversation merged to, okay, well, what about a hybrid if they're at home with us a few days a week, but then they do get to go in and do sports or whatever. And then over the course of 2 years, he was like, they're not going, they're not touching any school, I want them home. And he's really excited about it now. But the values were there and the conversations were all so productive and I was willing to bend and flex. But that's a really high priority and something that we've, again, talked about since the very beginning. So it was like, how can we structure our life to make sure that that is doable? And again, he's done that and it's been, the greatest thing that happened to him career-wise. So it's really positive. I think it just shows that when you orient your life to things that are objectively good, like you'll be rewarded in that sense. When you take risks and you bet on yourself, that's just a net positive, which is something that I'm, trying to jump into right now, but it's definitely
100%. Yeah, you're gonna be fine. Like, no, it'll be like amazing. It'll be amazing. I'm excited for you. Yeah,
it'll be fun.
I didn't end up signing. Like, I had a few offers to sign with people for the podcast, and I was just like, but I'm fortunate because I've always been kind of doing it on the side of other things. So I was never like, I don't know. I don't want to work with anybody. Yeah, like really. I'm too difficult to work with. Like, it was that.
Self-awareness is good.
Yeah. Like, you don't want to work with me. I don't want to work with you. No one wants this. Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah. So did he just watch what was going on in schools for a couple of years? And then he was like, maybe private schools also have the same problem.
I think that, and then also getting to know me. And I have so many friends that are homeschooled. And he just started to, because he didn't know any homeschoolers. Yeah, okay. And we're much more, my circle is made up of a lot of homeschoolers. And so I think he continued to meet more of us and realized like, you're all really impressive and you're very smart and you have really, really interesting careers. And I think that changed his mind as well. But yeah, definitely just understanding the school systems more and that a lot of private schools are not exempt from it. And so many families have to do something other than homeschooling and it's not doable for a lot of people. And I've never wanted to shame people for doing other things. And I think those parents are very careful with where they send their kids and they're very involved because of that fact. And so I know that there are great schools out there. I think that they're just few and far between and the system is still set up against them. They're gonna have to be fighting that all the time. And so he knows that that's out there, but on a whole, he was like, if we have the opportunity, if we can set up our life to be able to do this, like why wouldn't be? And I also think the thing that changed his mind and so many other people's minds is that, I don't even know how many years ago, 15 years ago when I started homeschooling, there was barely anything. It was like I lived in Chattanooga, Tennessee. There was one co-op, like homeschool group in the entire city. We had to drive super far away from it and it was weird. It was like very, very odd, really, really small. And my mom was like, this is not going to be your people. We're going to do our own thing. And so
those were the people I'd heard about.
Exactly. Yeah. And she was like, okay, you're not going to be that homeschooler. And so I was like, so she basically created this, program for me where she designed the curriculum. She took all these books from, classical education, school curricula, and had me in basically every single extracurricular under the sun, where I was dancing, I was in gymnastics, I was singing, I was doing theater, I was volunteering at church. She ran a nonprofit for most of my childhood. I would go work at the nonprofit and run events. Anyway, it was just a very, very engaged and hands-on homeschooled experience, which I think that makes the difference between the homeschoolers that are the stereotypes and the ones that kind of break through those, is that we were highly socialized in a very dynamic and intentional way. And the statistics actually show now that homeschoolers are more well socialized. I mean, they test higher, they're being recruited by Ivy Leagues, all this stuff, but the socialization aspect is really what people care about and look towards. But when you're homeschooled, you're not, if your parents are doing it right, you're not going to be in this one class with the same group of kids who are the same age, who are from the same district, area, whatever. It's like I had friends from all different backgrounds of all ages. I was interacting with adults at a very, very young age, thanks to my mom's work and the things that I would do. I had so many friends. It was like overwhelming, like my social life when I was, 8 years old.
Yeah,
and perfect. I could talk to a tree. And I was so social that I think it was like weird to other kids who were my age, because it was like, how, like, all these people and you're doing all these things, but it was just so second nature to me. And so by the time that I was an adult, when so many of my good friends, who had gone up through the traditional school system, were just starting to apply for jobs, were going to colleges, that kind of thing, and they were having to interact with adults and go through interviews and that sort of thing, it was totally out of their element because they just hadn't had to interact with adults who were not teachers or their parents. And for me, I was just so comfortable, so adept, so flexible. And I think that's the social advantage. Like, you might not have normal socialization. You might not have school socialization and be around like your best friends for, 12 years. And that's one thing that I feel like I not missed out on, but it's one of the things that as a kid I was bummed about. It's like everybody has like their high school friends and they have their friends that they were in school with from K to 12. And I didn't have that. And that's one form of socialization for sure. But mine was just so diverse and all over the place. And I think it served me really, really well and made me flexible. So I'm grateful for it.
Oh, that sounds good. I went through the traditional school route, but I changed schools so many times that because we moved a bunch, and then I don't know, I went like elementary school to middle school. I just chose a different middle school than everybody I knew. Okay. And then with high school, it was the same thing. And I remember in high school being like, I have friends in my neighborhood who've known people for 12 years.
Yep.
Like, why do I keep like bouncing around to like 5 or 6 different schools?
Made you
I knew a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not friends with any of them except for one. So it didn't make any difference anyway.
But you were able to be resilient and land on your feet, which I think even if it's a bit uncomfortable, is better. That's one thing I think that my mom did that was very unconventional, is that we didn't live in the same place for my entire childhood. We moved around a lot. I was like constantly jumping back and forth between like LA and Chattanooga, and we lived in Washington and all of this, and I was homeschooled. And she did the same thing for my brothers who are 12 and 14 years older than me. And they were constantly moving to different schools. She was trying new things for them. They lived in different places, and it was intentional. She was like, I never want my kids to be risk averse and too comfortable.
Interesting.
It was like she wanted like borderline, like I don't want my kids to be uncomfortable all the time. She was like, I want them at a very young age to be able to make new friends, land on their feet, be resilient, not need to be in like the 4th grade soup to feel like, they have a sense of self or confidence, like they can go anywhere and know who they are, be able to make friends. And that was her entire reasoning behind it, which is I learned that later on. I was like, that's why you did this? Like, that's why we were constantly on the move.
Wow.
And it's so interesting that she thought about that. I mean, that's why
I know. That's way outside the box too.